Thank you, Mr. Michel, for this interview. Common problems and common challenges. Which is the present status of the relationship between Bahamas and Dominican Republic?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for the warm welcome that your country's extended to me. This is perhaps my fourth or fifth time here, always on official business, and each time the welcome has been warm and extensive. And your country's very close to the southern border of the Bahamas. And as a child, growing up in the Bahamas, I was reflecting coming here in the car that the way the British ran things in the colonial times, there was a complete separation from what's going on here and what's going on in the Bahamas. So one of the consequences of that is that I know very little Spanish because the British English was the whole world. But we live in a hemisphere where Spanish is the predominant language, and we're trying as a country at home now to rectify that by causing people to learn Spanish because it's such an integral part of the hemisphere. Having said that, the status of relations between our countries, excellent, no issues whatsoever. And if there are issues, we're only a phone call away. The Prime Minister, when he was here yesterday, said that one of the reasons he wanted to come to the inauguration, and he's just recovering from back surgery, is because he deeply appreciated the assistance which your country gave in airlifting our diplomats out of Port-au-Prince several months ago during the middle of the most intense part of their crisis. So I think that shows that things are quite close, and we appreciate the relationship.
Anyway, what kind of issue do you think would define those ties?
Trade, tourism, medical tourism, and education in Spanish as well, because people come here to learn Spanish. There are many Dominican-led families in the Bahamas, women married to men from the Dominican Republic. And in the international context, we work together in OAS on hemispheric issues, from as diverse as the issue in Haiti, of course, and Venezuela, and the larger hemisphere as it relates to the United States of America and the developed states. So that grounds the relationship.
Haiti is a very big problem for the Dominican Republic. Do you think that the main powers of the world, Canada, the United States, or France, could have made more to contribute to that solving the problem?
Perhaps, and I've heard that said. Money is always an issue. I think money is a big problem, a big part of solving the issues in Haiti. But it's a complex issue, and I've been engaged in trying to help resolve those issues from when I first became foreign minister in 2002. And one thing I learned is you can't tell Haitians what to do. So it's a question of persuasion, cajoling in some senses, trying to move the project along. So one steps gingerly into that. There's a deep sense of sovereign pride in the country, particularly since they were the first black republic in this hemisphere. So you come to the table with that as a background. On your specific point, the point was made that after their independence from France, there was a huge monetary burden imposed upon them in order to maintain that independence, and it bankrupted the country. And so there's a lot to be said for economic problems being the source of their difficulties. Notwithstanding that, though, in the modern era, countries like Canada, the United States, and the European countries have in fact supported the progress toward democracy in Haiti, but it remains a difficult project, and what I'm pleased at this time is that things appear to be moving in the right direction. But I think you always have to approach what happens in Haiti with a sense of moving gingerly and hoping that there is well-being going forward without pushing too hard.
But for a long time, Bahamas and the Dominican Republic have been dealing with the Haitian illegal immigration.
Right.
How to establish a conciliation between human rights and sovereignty.
We are very practiced at this, having been the brunt of migration from Saint Domingue, I think was what they was called before it was called Haiti. Many people fled Haiti after the revolution and came to the Bahamas. Laws were passed back in the 19th century because the then establishment believed that the revolution would spread to the Bahamas. So it's a long time dealing with it. But what we do is to adhere strictly to the rules and the law. So the law says how you can migrate lawfully to the Bahamas, and there are people thousands of people from Haiti who migrate lawfully to the Bahamas. But if you migrate unlawfully to the Bahamas, the relationship with the Haitian government is such that repatriation takes place within 72 hours. And there's an agreement that the processing will take place within that time. And this includes being part of the treaty which says that you cannot return someone to their country if they have a well-grounded fear of persecution. And so our immigration officers are trained to interview those who come into the country as irregular migrants to determine whether they have such a well-grounded fear. In most cases, I would say close to 99% of the cases, they do not have that fear, and so therefore they're repatriated to their home country. And usually there's not an issue.
The Caribbean region has been a great landscape where had been strolling empires and diversity of powers. Do you think there is a lack of communications between the countries that compound all the region?
There are a couple of divides. One of them, of course, is language. But in 1973, 4 countries of CARICOM, the English-speaking countries, Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, decided to recognize and form diplomatic relations with Cuba. That was a significant step. And all of us now have good relationships with Cuba. We have traditionally had good relationships with Dominican Republic. There is an outstanding request to become part of CARICOM by the Dominican Republic, which I think is still being considered. Then you have the dependent territories of the British, and we're trying to get them into CARICOM. And the one outstanding issue was Haiti. Haiti was out by itself, so we invited, they are now into CARICOM. So I think all of the traditional differences are now being worked on, and today's young people understand that this is a small region. I think in total we're about 40 to 50 million people, so a very tiny part of the world market. But what is significant is that we all push above our weight in things like sports, in culture, and in the international organizations. The intellectual talent throughout the region is so strong that you will find individual actors from your country and many countries around the region who are in important positions around the world because of that intellectual power. And I think that's the strength of our region. And it's getting better, not worse.
Do you think Bahamas can go along with Dominican Republic to present our country in other great platforms in Europe, in Asia, for example, to enhance our opportunity for markets, commerce?
Right now, we are at the cusp of signing a number of memoranda of understanding on political consultations on trade and cooperation on all the international fora. So I think you're right. That's the direction things are headed, and we must, because I say again, the region is only 50 million people, and that's a small region compared to what else exists in the world. So we have no choice, in my view, than to work together on all of the projects. And nothing, I think, is more key. Our number one foreign policy issue is climate change. So when COP29 takes place in Baku later this year, Dominican Republic, Bahamas, CARICOM will be at the table singing the same song, because we all suffer from the same issues with regard to climate change.
I think so.
Well, I think most of the questions you have already covered, and you have talked briefly about the state of diplomatic relation, but probably the minister can talk about that, and how we can support each other. So which are the areas the Dominican Republic can work with Bahamas and cooperate, and which are the areas that the Bahamas can cooperate with Dominican Republic. One of them is, for instance, that the Bahamas is the leader in the tourism, financial service, and maritime cooperation. And that's something very important for us. But there is other areas that probably we can cooperate in, agriculture, water.
Well, we are in the Bahamas fans of people-to-people contact. So one of the things that's advancing forward is the question of visa-free access of nationals of the Dominican Republic and Bahamians to the Dominican Republic. So as part of the consultations, because in the talks, the informal talks that we've had here, for example, the issues on trade, there's a lot of material here and services that people from the Bahamas want to access, but you've got to travel through the United States to do so. It adds to costs. Many people can't get visas to go to the U.S., so it would be beneficial for us to have direct contacts. One of the things the ambassador has been working on is the question of airline flights between here and there. And then, of course, shipping is important. Goods for construction. The price advantages of Dominican materials and services are so much in favor that we really need to explore how to move forward on those bilateral trade issues. But as I say, in the major international fora, the issue now is climate change. And we need to beat the drum on that issue, because even though people have talked about loss and damage, they've not actually actualized the money for loss and damage. And you could have 24 hours of rain here, which floods out your city. How do you recover from it when you're not responsible for the damage which comes from climate change? So that's our number one focus on the international arena. The second area is there are now negotiations going on about financial services, and the question of the OECD imposing taxes and various rules on how you conduct your financial business without consultation with us, which has caused a lot of damage across this region. So now we're working together in the United Nations to see how we can come up with an international treaty which governs that, so that it does not reside in the hands of the OECD, but rather in a world international body.
Seeing the big picture that present China and the United States as the great powers, how Bahamas and the Dominican Republic can work in order to make sound our voice as a group in the region?
People-to-people contact, regular political consultations. That's the way I think this all works. And what is important is China is a big giant, the United States is a big giant. And when the giants fight, the grass gets trampled. So I think all of us have to learn how to be adept at walking through that minefield. And we can learn from each other's experiences. And we've had relations with the People's Republic since 1997. The United States, obviously, we've had a long history with them. And right now, the source of capital around the world and in this region, I think the Chinese have something like $20 billion US to lend, and they want to lend in this region. The money is cheap, I think something like 2% interest. This has caused some anxiety in the United States, but you have to get development monies where you can get it, and there are no political strings attached as far as we're concerned. We are safely in the U.S. orbit of trade and in the Western orbit in politics. But if you're looking for capital, there are two sources of capital around these days. One is the Middle East, and the other is China. And so we access those without strings attached. And I think we can learn, both countries can learn in their experiences with that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, probably the end could be a personal question, if you allow me. Of course, not me that is doing it, Neuvo Diario. That could be well, we know that you were mentored by the founding father of the Bahamas, and you worked with him. But the question is, why you became active in public policy from your early career as a journalist and being a pupil of Sir Lyndon Paddling, founding father of the Bahamas? It's a personal question.
Yeah, okay, so
For our college.
yeah, so I've only wanted to be one thing in life as a politician from I was 10 years old. Jack Kennedy, the former president of the United States, was the kind of hero of the people in my generation. His speech at his inauguration asked not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So that inspired a lot of people. So when I stepped out of high school, I was 16 years of age, I met the founding prime minister of our country. And in those days, it was quite easy. They have mentoring now as a formal thing, but it was quite informal. He just said, come be with me. And so I followed him around from place to place, place to place. And we fought for a while there, but at the end, we were quite close friends. He died in 2000, sadly, I think a little too soon. But the memory of working with him has grounded the way I think about things. My relationship with public policy is also grounded in the way he taught us how to deal with public issues. So I'm deeply appreciative of the experience I had working with him. And that has led me to have the job that I have now, where I've gotten to meet leaders across the region and across the world, including now 3 of your presidents and several foreign ministers. And I gotta say that each of them have treated me on a first name basis. So I feel quite gratified by that. And I want to congratulate the present president on his inauguration for a second term. And of course, I wish the Dominican Republic, all the best in the future. And anything we can do to support your country, we're happy to do.
Finally, how the economy have changed the trade or the diplomacy?
How is the economy?
The economy have changed in some ways the form to make diplomacy work.
Yeah, so trade is the number one thing these days. We're going to be putting trade attaches in every embassy across the world, and your own ambassador, since she's received the post, has been trying to In Jamaica, for example, she was a key to forming a Chamber of Commerce, which cements ties with the business community in this country. She's looking at a similar thing for the Bahamas, and that's our focus as well, because trade moves the economy and I think improves relations, so that's an important aspect of diplomacy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Misha, for that interview.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Bye-bye.
Sí, sí, claro.
De acuerdo.